Hello folks, welcome back to the Wikipedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. So today again we are continuing with the winding up of the companies, right? And I'll again remind you that the provisions for this chapter will be contained in your Companies Act 1956, right? So this is not the first lecture on winding up. We have already had a couple of lectures. So if you have missed them, please go back to those lectures, go through the topics, understand them, and then come back to this lecture. Because henceforward, from this lecture onwards, we will get into the core of winding up, right? In this lecture, what we are aiming at, or to talk about the prime consideration of today's lecture, would be the understanding of the liquidator, right? We have seen the powers of the liquidator, right? We have seen the liquidator from the point of view of the company so far. That yeah, he is one person who will be coming to us, who will be taking away the powers of all the board of directors. He's the person with whom all the properties, all the assets will be vesting, right? He can dispose of the asset and he'll pay off all the liabilities, and then he will take forward the entire procedure of winding up. And finally, once the procedure of winding up is done, the company will be dissolved. So that is how we look up to him, that okay, he's the liquidator. But now we need to understand, right? The person who is coming to you as a liquidator, his appointment, his powers, his positions, right? We'll have to understand who is an official liquidator and who is a proportional liquidator. Provisional liquidator, right? Because you need to understand the difference between the two. You'll have to understand the situations when you will be awarded or you will be appointed and as an official liquidator, and when will you be appointed as a provisional liquidator. So there are two situations, right? It is almost the same person at different times, but due to the change in situation, the position and the name, right, the capacity of the liquidator changes. So we'll discuss this topic in detail in the continuing lecture today. And if you have anything before this about the power of the court, the contributories and everything, then please go back to the previous lecture and refer to them, right? So the basic consideration today is the liquidator, and the first we will be discussing about the official liquidator, right? So basically, who is an official liquidator? If we understand, then if we start from the scratch, right, then the cases, whenever anybody wants to file a winding up petition, any creditor or the contributory or the company or anybody, even the registrar, then they will have to approach to the relevant court. Now, which is the relevant court? Basically, it is either the High Court, or in some circumstances, they can also be the subordinate district courts, right? We have seen the situations for them as well. Now, you need to understand that, okay, if the case is vesting with the High Court, and then the High Court appoints a liquidator, then it means that yes, the High Court will have to have the liquidator with themselves, right? So each High Court of the company will have to have an official liquidator. How does the High Court decide who would be the official liquidator? Do they appoint any person as a liquidator? That okay, we have a vacancy for an official liquidator, please apply for the post. Okay, you qualify, you are the official liquidator. No, that is not the procedure, right? What happens is each High Court, they have their own officers, right? Either the full-time, whole-time officers, the part-time officers. So the central government will choose among these officers. They'll choose one person to become the official liquidator of the High Court for the other companies, right? So we understand that yes, every High Court will have an official liquidator, and that liquidator will be given to the High Court from the CG, by the CG. So CG will appoint the whole-time officer of the High Court as the liquidator of that High Court, right? But it is not compulsory that every time a whole-time officer has to be a liquidator. Even a part-time officer can be appointed as an official liquidator, right? But when will that be done? That will only be done when there is a heavy amount of workload that the whole-time officers as liquidators are not able to handle, and they want to extend the power to some other officers, and you don't have ample amount of qualified whole-time officers. When I talk about qualified, it means the people who are qualified enough to be a liquidator, right? So at that point of time, the power of the CG will also extend to the part-time officers, and even the part-time officers of that High Court can be appointed as the official liquidator. Got the point? So that is the first thing that we had to talk. The whole-time officer of the High Court, right? It's not HI, it's HIGH. Now, that was the case about the liquidator at the High Court level, right? Now, but we have also seen that the power, right, that can also vest at the level of the district court at times, right? Now, who will be the official liquidator when the power to the jurisdiction in the case of liquidation vests with the district court? So at that point of time, the official liquidator will be appointed from the district court as well. And the first priority, when we talk about the liquidator from the district court, the first priority will be given to the receiver, right? The official receiver which is attached to that district court, right? And you know why is a receiver attached basically? Like the liquidator stands for the purpose of winding up the company, right? Similarly, the receiver stands in the same capacity for an insolvent person. So that receiver who has been attached to any district court, he will be appointed as the official liquidator for the purpose of the company winding up as well. And if in any case there is no receiver with that district court, right, then any other officer of the district court can be appointed as the official liquidator for that district court, right? So that was the second point, the receiver of the district court. Now the other thing we also need to understand is that there is not only one person as the official liquidator. There may be the need of appointing an assistant or a deputy official liquidator as well, right? So even that can be done with the same court, either the district court or the high court, right? And in that case, those liquidator who has been appointed in the position of the assistant or deputy liquidator, official liquidator, they will also be known by that name. That yeah, this is the assistant official liquidator and this is the deputy official liquidator, right? Right. Now the question is, who would be the liquidator in the case of winding up of a company? So you need to understand that no private person would ever be a liquidator when it is the case of the compulsory winding up of the company. It will always be the official liquidator who should be appointed as the liquidator in the case of winding up of the company, right? So you understand the importance of the word official liquidator, right? People can be liquidator in their personal capacity as well, but they cannot be appointed as a liquidator in the case of compulsory winding up of a company. If it is voluntary, okay, you know, the shareholders, they will appoint liquidator by themselves. So in that case, they can appoint any person who is in the capacity of a liquidator, right? And he can serve the company in the capacity of a liquidator. But when it comes to the compulsory winding up, then compulsory winding up basically is undertaken by the court. And if the court is sending some person as a liquidator to the company, then that person needs to be an official liquidator only, right? And that is basically the reason why we say that the liquidator cannot be addressed by his personal name. Whenever you have to refer to the liquidator, you will have to refer to that person as the official liquidator only. You'll have to say that yes, this person is the official liquidator for the company, nothing else, right? So that is the basic purpose, because any other liquidator if you are appointing who is working in the private capacity, then you can also refer him by his name. But when it is when we talk about the official liquidator, you will also always have to refer to that person as the official liquidator. So that is the main distinction, that is the priority given to that person, right? Next, since we have already understood by now that the receiver is basically appointed when the case refers to an individual person, and the liquidator in the same thing, they have the same work, but the liquidator is connected to the company, right? So the same person, when it comes to the company level, we call him a liquidator, and when we talk about the individual level, we call him a receiver, right? They have the same duties basically. So you can say that okay, even we can appoint a receiver for discharging or for dispensing with the assets of the company and discharging the liabilities, right? The receiver can also dispose of the asset of the company when they are disposing of the asset of the individual, because they know the procedure, how to go about, they know what is to be done. But do you think that is enough for anybody to appoint a receiver in place of a liquidator? The act says that you should not at any point of time, right, appoint a receiver as the official liquidator. The basic reason behind that is just to eliminate the competition between the receiver and the liquidator. But if there is any situation that there is no official liquidator and you need to assign the receiver this job, then you will have to take the permission from the court. So a receiver can be appointed as an official liquidator only with the permission of the court. Now, okay, you understood that yes, official liquidator comes to you and he performs all the functions of winding up. He does all the tasks. He makes the company go through the entire procedure, and at the end, when the winding up is completed, the company is dissolved. Right? Now you see that official liquidator can be appointed in any situation, whether it is a compulsory winding up. The petition may be filed by the creditor, by the company itself, by the contributories, by anybody. Anybody can file the petition. So do you think the company will be liable to pay to the official liquidator? Because if that is the situation, how do you fix the amount? Depending on the company, because some are very small company, some are very large company, then you will have to have a bandwidth that okay, if the company falls between this to this turnover or this to this net worth, then this would be the fees of the liquidator. You understand, this would become a complicated process. So to simplify that, what they have decided is that the central government would charge certain fees for liquidation from the company, right? And that will be calculated by the central government on its own. We do not have to be concerned about that. We are not studying about how or what percentage will it charge. The only thing is, okay, it is on the central government, they will charge the company certain fees for liquidation. And out of that fees itself, the central government at their end itself, they will pay to the official liquidator. You are not concerned with any payment to the liquidator. And since they are receiving the remuneration from the central government, they should not accept any further amount from the company. Right? So we have seen that the remuneration will be received from the central government. Next, now consider a situation. Mr. XYZ was appointed as an official liquidator for a certain company, right? The liquidator started with its function. It took away all the assets, took away all the properties, the books, the documents, the papers of the company, and began with the process of liquidation. Began with disposing of the assets, paying off the liabilities in their preferences, right? The process has already started. But now, somewhere in the middle, you came to know about a fact. You were enlightened with a fact that the appointment of this official liquidator, right, was invalid. Or maybe this person was not at all qualified to be an official liquidator. Maybe he was not appointed as an official liquidator. Maybe he's a receiver and he has no approval from the court. Whatever be the situation, right? The conclusion is that he is not a valid official liquidator. What do? He has already begun with the procedures. Some of the assets have been disposed, liabilities have been paid off. Will you get those assets back? Will you ask those creditors to give back the money? No, you cannot do that, right? So for that purpose, it has been very clearly specified that if at any point of time there is invalidity attached to the official liquidator, to the appointment of the official liquidator, right, then any act which has already been done prior to the attachment of that invalidity, right, all the acts that has been done prior to that will be eligible, right? They will be valid. But once the invalidity of the appointment of the liquidator is shown, then any subsequent act by that liquidator would be considered to be invalid. So it means to say that unless and until any disqualification is attached to the official liquidator, all the acts done by him would be valid. But once it is attached and it has been declared and the company knows it, then please stop the liquidator. Because now any further act that he does after knowing the fact that he is an invalid official liquidator, then the acts that has been done after this would be invalid, right? Now we should also understand the basic purpose behind the official liquidator, right? Who is appointing the official liquidator? The central government, right? And then the court gives the official liquidator off to the company that please go and wind up this company, right? And if you look at the preference of payment, then after the workman, after the employee, after the secured creditors and all, even the government stands in the queue to get their statutory dues, to get the income tax that is pending, right? So the official liquidator also has the duty to realize that money from the asset and pay it off to the department. And for that very purpose only, when the official liquidator comes to the company, right, he has to issue a notice of his appointment to the income tax office, right? And that would be done within 30 days from his appointment. And then the income tax department will have 3 months time, or the income tax officer, the specific officer will have 3 months time to intimate the total liability, right? The tax liability that the company has towards the income tax authority. And then the liquidator, when he is when he is disposing of the assets of the company, he will put aside that amount that he thinks would be needed, right, to discharge the income tax liability, right? So this is the entire facts that were connected to the official liquidator, right? First, that he would be the official liquidator of the High Court appointed by the central government. Second, he could also be an official liquidator of the district court, right? But that is the situation when if he would either be the receiver would be the official liquidator, or any other person that would be need basis, right? You can also have deputy and assistant liquidator. We were not aware of the fact before this, right? And then you need to understand that in the case of compulsory winding up, only the official liquidator would be the liquidator, no other person, right? And he will also always be referred to as the official liquidator, right? Now you will have to draw a thin line between the distinction to distinguish between the receiver and the official liquidator in order to avoid the competition between the two. So if you want to appoint a receiver in the place of an official liquidator ever, you will have to take the permission of the court, right? And if there is any fee that the liquidator has to receive, obviously there will be a fees, then that fees will be paid by the central government, right? And if there is any invalidity attached to the official liquidator, then the prior acts would be valid and the further acts would be invalid. And when he is appointed, within 30 days he will also have to send a notice to the income tax officer. That is the entire job responsibility of the official liquidator. Now we move on to the second category of liquidator, that is the provisional liquidator. Now the provisions that are related to the provisional liquidator are contained in section 450, right, of the previous Companies Act, that is Companies Act 1956. Now we need to understand one thing. You know the word provisional, right? That means it is not final. That on the provisional basis, you must have seen in your direct tax as well that there are provisional rates that are applicable. So please pay tax on this rate, and once it is confirmed, then we will either refund it to you or charge you the extra thing. So in the same case, you will also appoint a provisional liquidator at times, because he is not the confirmed liquidator. Maybe when the winding up procedure starts, right, with all legal effect, you may change this provisional liquidator and send another official liquidator. Or there may be a situation that, okay, you will continue the provisional liquidator, right? This is always a dicey situation. So when you appoint a provisional liquidator, it is the case when the winding up of the company is not sure. Because once you are sure, you will appoint the official liquidator. But unless and until you are sure, that means either the contributors or contributories, the creditors or the company, any one of them, or the registrar, right, they have already filed a petition for winding up, but the case has not been dispensed with by the court. That means the order for winding up has not yet been given, but there is high probability that yes, the order will be given. So what will happen in that case? When the company comes to know that, okay, now I think there is a threat, the court may order winding up. So what they do is they start planning. Okay, Mr. X, you are my friend, you have lent so much money to the company, but if you stand in the position of the creditor, your priority or your preference comes a little later. Do one thing, take your money away. This is the asset, I'll sell it off, I'll give you the money, or take the asset away. Right? Again, Mr. Y also comes, listen, when you were in trouble, I had paid it to you. Now you're going to be wound up, I will lose my money. Do one thing, before you be wound up, you have anyways lost everything. Right? At least give me my money back. And they again try to dispose of some other asset and pay off Y. So you understand what I mean to say? What I mean to say is, when the company already knows that they will be wound up and the official liquidator is going to come and he is going to dispose of all the assets and pay off the liabilities, then in order of preference, the creditors or the liabilities would be paid off. Now if there is somebody whom they want to dispense with this liability, what do? They start misappropriating the asset, right? When they know that yes, it is going to be wound up finally, so beforehand they start manipulation. So if at any point of time the court thinks that the company will indulge into certain activities that would result into manipulation or these things, then he would send an official liquidator, a provisional liquidator, not an official, a provisional liquidator, right, in order to safeguard the interest, right. So basically you understand that the provisional liquidator is appointed in a special circumstance and specifically to protect the asset of the company. And when is he appointed? He is appointed when the hearing or disposal of the winding up petition is still pending, right? And then the court also thinks that there's a danger that the company's asset or any other property of the company would be misappropriated, right? So in order to protect the interest of the creditors and safeguard the properties of the company, the court would appoint an official provisional liquidator to go and safeguard the assets, right? So this provisional liquidator, although we call him a provisional liquidator, but you understand the basic concept behind why we are calling him a provisional liquidator is because he has been appointed on provisional basis. His appointment is not yet confirmed. Why? Because he has been appointed in an intermediate period. The petition has been filed, but the winding up order has not been passed. So before the winding up order is passed, they cannot appoint an official liquidator. So what they do is they appoint the same official liquidator, but they call him a provisional liquidator. That if I do not pass an order of winding up, I'll call him back. So he's not going there to start the winding up proceeding. He's not going there to sell off the assets, to pay off the liabilities. No, he is going there just for the one purpose, cause, that is to safeguard the assets, to safeguard the interest, right? But when the provisional liquidator also goes to the company, the job of the company gets hampered, because so far they have not been ordered winding up, so they are continuing with their operating activities. But if the provisional liquidator is there, that operating activity would be hampered. So the company may not want the provisional liquidator to come there, right? So the court also, playing on a fairer side, would give them a chance of making the representation that okay, why don't you want a provisional liquidator? What is the problem? And if they are able to satisfy the court that okay, this is the reason why we do not want the official liquidator and this is what has happened, then the court may, after being satisfied, dispense with the order of sending the provisional liquidator, right? Then this provisional liquidator, we know that the official liquidator himself is appointed as a provisional liquidator, right? That is one thing we have already known, right? So do you think there will be a difference in the power of the provisional liquidator and the official liquidator? Basically no, because he is the official liquidator, right? He will have the same power as the official liquidator, but since he is going to the company in the capacity of a provisional liquidator, then during the time of appointment as a provisional liquidator, the court can prescribe any limitation on the power, but that will be case specific and at the time of appointment as the provisional liquidator only. So there is no straightforward rule that okay, they do not have this power or they do not have that power. The power will be decided or limited by the court at the time of their appointment. And then at the end, if the winding up order is affirmed, if it is confirmed that yeah, we will pass a winding up order, then the provisional liquidator will automatically transform into the official liquidator, and all the limitations on the power of the provisional liquidator will automatically be withdrawn, right? That would have the nil effect if he is automatically converted into a official liquidator, right? So it is automatically converted into a liquidator. The last part is that it is a drastic measure. So what do you mean when you say it is a drastic measure, right? So as we have already discussed, right, the situations when the provisional liquidator is appointed, we need to understand that the court is also taking a risk by appointing a provisional liquidator. Why? Because suppose at the end the court decides that okay, we will not wind up the company, the problem is resolved otherwise, there are other ways out that we have formed, then in that situation appointing a provisional liquidator would paralyze the operation of the company. That would hinder the operation of the company. So already the company is not performing at its best, right? That is why there is a situation of winding up. That is why somebody has raised a petition. So already the company is not performing at its best, and then we also put a hurdle on its operation. So that is not correct. So the court has to be very, very, very conscious, right, when they are appointing a provisional liquidator. If at any point of time the company opposes that we don't need a provisional liquidator, then the court will not appoint a provisional liquidator. Right? And basically, when does the court appoint a provisional liquidator? It is when the petition has come from the company. The company says with that please compulsorily wind up, because they also have the option of voluntary winding up. Right? They can call the liquidator and wind up. But now what they want is they want a clean check. Send your liquidator, let him do all the proceedings and wind up the company. So maybe the company is planning to misappropriate the asset or something. That is a risky situation. Right? Now consider other situation. Some of the contributories, they raised a petition and the company did not oppose. That means the company is mentally prepared to be wound up. And if they are mentally prepared, maybe they are financially also prepared. That means their financial statements, their course of action, these have been already planned, and hence they may misappropriate the asset. Right? So these are certain situations, right? So when the court is appointing the provisional liquidator, the court has to keep these things in mind. Right? And then take a judicious decision whether or not to appoint the provisional liquidator. Right? So that is the only difference. The provisional liquidator also is an official liquidator in its capacity, but being appointed on a provisional basis. And hence, at the initiation, when he is appointed as a provisional liquidator, he is not allowed to exercise his powers to the extreme. Right? That is the only difference. Right? So now I understand you have clearly understood the difference between the official liquidator and the provisional liquidator, and you are well versed with the concept of the liquidator. Right? So with that, we'll come to the end of this lecture today, and we'll continue with the other topics in the subsequent lecture. So please stay tuned for that. In the meantime, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you. Bye-bye.